Bun găsit, stimați utilizatori ai portalului de știri NordNews.md. Eu sunt Nicoleta Pânzaru și vă invit să urmăriți un nou interviu marca NordNews. De această dată vom discuta despre problemele, dar și oportunitățile de dezvoltare ale Republicii Moldova, dar și pașii pe care îi întreprinde țara noastră spre marea familie europeană, împreună cu ambasadorul Uniunii Europene în Republica Moldova, Janis Mazeiks. Mr. Ambassador, good afternoon and thank you for accepting our invitation for today.
Thank you for having me.
2022 is considered to be the hardest year for the entire European continent because of the unjustified war of Russia in Ukraine. After the war started, the European Commission recommended the states to save 50% of gas by the end of March 2023, and we all know that one of the most biggest fears of Moldovans is lack of gas. Has the situation changed since this announcement of European Commission? Is Europe prepared to face this winter season?
I think Europe is better prepared because these are the things that take time, and this is true both for the Republic of Moldova and for the European Union, because for many years Russian Federation was a major gas supplier to the European Union, and so Europeans were relying on Russian gas. Around 40% of gas that was consumed in the European Union came from Russia. Unfortunately, not only Russia demonstrated this year that it is ready to violate the fundamental principles of international law by committing act of aggression against its neighbor, but also that it is not a reliable trading partner. And this is something that was a new thing for European consumers, but where the European Union has taken quite a lot of steps to move to more predictable providers. This will take time. This is not something that has been accomplished, but to give you an idea, this year the rate of Russian gas in the European consumption has gone down from 40% to 9%. So it is already clear that Europe is diversifying away from the Russian gas. What we have also seen is that European Union has taken the decision to fill up more of its storage capacities before the winter. So the plan was to reach 85% capacity of the storage by 1st of October, and in fact Europe managed to reach that goal already several weeks ago. So I think we are in a more prepared situation than before, but of course there are things that will not be possible for this year, like for instance getting more LNG from United States. And this is also, I think, very much true for the Republic of Moldova, because many of the things that the government is ready to do, they take time. So to give you an idea, today I was at a school where the energy efficiency project was unveiled and this project was started in 2017. Okay. So you can imagine that from the moment that it's started to plan to the day when school is already fully redesigned with new systems of energy wall installation, it has taken 5 years. So it can be sped up perhaps more, but it's not possible to switch overnight from inefficient system to efficient, and that is why it's important that the government has been working for the past year to create more diversification away from Russian sources, so that if the situation develops so that it is necessary to move away from Russian gas, that the government would be ready for that.
So you are trying to say that the things take time and the government are prepared really for this winter season, if you talk about the Republic of Moldova?
I can't say that the government is fully prepared for the winter, but it's definitely a much better situation than you had a year ago, because then it was clear that the government which had just taken office was not prepared either to start purchasing gas elsewhere or to get to new sources or have alternatives. This time around, the government, with EU assistance, also with EU expertise, has been already preparing for different possibilities, and I think this is the best that can happen. So it's not about whether you stop consuming Russian gas, but whether you have a plan what to do if this has to happen.
Now I understood. Mr. Mazeiks, let's talk further about the EU role in the Republic of Moldova. I want to begin with the subject of justice, because actually, by the way, this is the most important problem to resolve in our country if we want to make part of EU family. And I want here you to ask, how does EU help Moldova to accelerate the reform of justice in our country? And interesting question, why did the European authorities decide to provide financial support for the renovation of detention centers in the North Republic of Moldova? Because I have been there, and to be honest, the centers of detention have a high quality treatment.
So I think this is an important part of the European Union values, because it is not just about caring for the citizens that everybody loves. Like, for instance, it is easy to care for children or for women.
Another categories of people.
Sorry?
Another categories of people.
Yes, different vulnerable categories of people, which of course deserve our support and where we also are providing support. But it is also important that we ensure humane conditions for those who perhaps even don't deserve it, but at the same time we have to be humane towards them. So that is important, that the conditions in these facilities meet the standards. There are also European standards, it's more Council of Europe standards that provide how much space the detained person has to have and that sort of thing. And of course it's also important, by the way, for your relations with the European Court of Human Rights, because it can lead to, if these situations are bad, people, detained persons, prisoners have the every right to turn to the European Court of Human Rights, and if the court would find that this is inhumane, then they would have compensation in their favor. That happens quite regularly in many countries of Europe. So I think it is very good that the situation in the detention centers in the north has improved. When it comes to the justice reform, indeed this is something that the European Union has been pushing the successive governments here in the Republic of Moldova for years. And unfortunately, for a long time it wasn't materializing. So we are glad to work with this government, which has had the cleaning up of the judiciary as one of the highest priorities upon the...
To clean the system. To clean the system.
Yes, absolutely, because that was also the demand of the Moldovan people who voted for these political forces so that the system would be cleaned up. So what we have seen, there has been this genuine interest, and what we have been providing from our side is genuine support. So we have primarily it is advisory role, because we have advice both through our experts who are permanently here in the Republic of Moldova in the field of justice or fighting corruption. We also have expertise that comes from the headquarters, from the European Commission. We also interact with the expertise of the Council of Europe, because that is also one important reference point. And of course we are also supporting this program financially. So now, for instance, there is the pre-vetting process going on. So the European Union helped choose the 6 candidates from whom the 3 international experts were selected by the parliament, and then we are also funding these experts together with other international donors, and also with our partners from the United States who are funding the secretariat for the pre-vetting evaluation committee. So this is something that is ongoing, and where I believe we will have even more interaction, because cleaning up judiciary is also one of the elements that the European Commission has highlighted in its opinion on the candidacy of Republic of Moldova for EU membership.
Also, Mr. Ambassador, one of the most important subjects and maybe fields actually for our country is infrastructure. We all know that if we want to correspond to European standards, our country must have a very modern and strong, powerful infrastructure. I want here to ask you, how does you help our country in order to make our infrastructure better than it was?
Well, we are cooperating quite a lot with other development partners, including European Investment Bank, European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. So quite often it is done through projects that are done through these development banks with some additional funding of European Union. Just yesterday I was in Cahul region. It was a good example of small support for infrastructure because it was about providing access to one of the nature preserves in the very south of the country, and in the past it had been just a dirt road, and now it is going, in a couple of months it will be an asphalt road, which I'm sure will also bring more tourists to the region, which I think is very important for the country. And this wasn't a big project, it was around 300,000 euros, which by our standards is not a big project. But we have plenty of projects across the country, for instance, when it comes to water treatment facilities or changing the street lighting, because many of these projects attain more than one goal. Because on the one hand, it is providing a better life quality for the citizens of those places, but on the other hand it's also health and safety and meeting European standards. So there's many things that you can gain that way. Or if it is modern lighting, then it's not just the quality of life of people who enjoy it, but it also means that you are closer to achieving the green economy goals that the European Union has also set.
I agree here with you because we have already seen the results of the infrastructures implemented by the EU here in Republic of Moldova. When I was driving to the Chișinău, we observed the good streets, the good quality, the highest quality streets. But if we begin to talk back to the Russian invasion and its consequences on a whole European continent and especially Republic of Moldova, we all know that Moldova is an agriculture country. Unfortunately, now the situation with the agriculture is very, very bad in our country. This is because, again, of the crisis of fuel and the energy crisis. Here I want you to ask, how does the EU can help to maintain or to resolve this important problem to our country due to this crisis?
Yeah, well, the European Union reacted quite quickly on the needs that the also agricultural producers of Republic of Moldova had. For instance, one of the first steps was to provide additional quotas for the transporters who needed to get their goods around the war in Ukraine, and further liberalizing afterwards even not having the requirements for permits in the European Union. The second very important step was the increase of tariff quotas for agricultural products, because there are still 7 product lines where there are limitations on how much Moldovan exporters can export to EU markets without paying tariffs and taxes. So the vast majority goes without tariffs, but for 7 product lines they still exist. So for those where it was seen that Moldova could meet or even exceed the existing quotas, they were tripled. So it was for apples, for plums, and for grapes.
Yeah.
So there were 3 very important domains for Moldova, and it was doubled for other products like cherries and garlic. So I think this is a very concrete example where we simplify the market access for Moldovan producers, but it goes beyond that. It's also training for the Moldovan producers so that they can meet the quality standards of the European Union. Again, still inspired by my visit to Cahul region yesterday, we were visiting table grape producers who were benefiting from EU support for drip irrigation so that they can get better crops. In fact, also it's good for the environment because they are consuming less water if it is a drip system. And of course, then they can reach European markets with high-quality products.
Mr. Ambassador, if you talk about the culture in the Republic of Moldova, because when tourists travel to Europe, they have opportunity to analyze monuments, architectural monuments. This is a sign that Europe invests and respects their culture, a situation which do not have the same appreciation in the Republic of Moldova. And proof of that is that architectural monuments which are left behind by the local or central even authorities. How does the EU in this situation help to strengthen the culture in the Republic of Moldova?
Well, first of all, culture is very important for the European Union because we are not just about trade. When we speak about values, culture is one of those values. So there is part why we are Europeans, and the reason why we're Europeans because we have the European culture, so that's why it is also very important to keep it, to perhaps to strengthen it or renovate it. And unfortunately what we have seen here is that in many areas the heritage that the country has is not as well kept as it would deserve. And it is of course sad because then it is also limiting the interest of tourists to either to come to Moldova or travel through Moldova, also inside Moldova, meaning Moldovans visiting their own country. And so there are several components to it. One is indeed the infrastructure because, well, for tourism you do need infrastructure like roads. And second is the objects themselves. So we have a number of projects that are supporting elements that are related to culture. Some of it is part of our confidence building measures like the Bender Fortress and Chisinau Circus, so which is also part for an important part for the culture here. And beyond that, we also have projects that are promoting culture as domain of society and economy even perhaps. Again, yesterday I had the chance to award 300,000 euro grant to the mayor of Cahul because they had developed a cultural strategy already with EU funds and now they are getting these 300,000 to implement this strategy. This will promote also their possibilities to have artists working there and things like that, which is both good for the artists and for the region as a cultural events host. So I think this is perhaps the direction that we can go also in the future.
Yes, I agree, and it's very important because with the help of you, we bring tourists to see the culture and diversify the culture in the Republic of Moldova. But the same situation, bad situation, it's about the medicine in the Republic of Moldova. If we make a comparison, in EU, the hospitals, central medicines are very high, have very high quality conditions for treatment. But in the Republic of Moldova, unfortunately, we do not have the same conditions. More than that, I would say that there are poor conditions for treatment for the patients. I would like you to ask, how do you comment of EU's involvement in this field of our country?
Okay, well, first, when it comes to the quality of the medical services, we should also remember that in Europe quite often there are fewer hospitals, which means that it is easier to ensure high quality of service in those few hospitals. And I understand the government is also thinking of ways how to consolidate the existing network of hospitals so that the quality can be focused in several hospitals, because, well, Moldova is not such a big country. It's not that you would need to travel for days to get to that hospital. So this is one answer how the quality can be improved by simply focusing the efforts more. The second way is when it comes to the EU support, and there the support has been quite diverse. One is the support that was provided during the COVID crisis, where we as Team Europe, both the EU and the member states, were providing vaccines and different equipment for the hospitals, and I'm sure that much of that equipment will be very useful also for COVID unrelated issues, like, for instance, systems for analyzing the samples where you can detect strands of COVID. Obviously, you can detect also different other illnesses. Similarly, oxygen concentrators, they are important for COVID patients, but they are also important for other patients. But also, one of the things that has the war in Ukraine brought with the Ukrainian refugees is also that the EU support for the society and as a host and for the refugees has meant that we have been able also to provide some support in the medical field. Like, for instance, there has been provision of generators that can provide electricity if there are electricity cuts for the hospitals, and obviously this is very important for ongoing operations, or more emergency vehicles for the country. So
a lot more things for strengthen the medicine in Republic of Moldova. One more positive impact that has you on Republic of Moldova are the internships between students, because our students have a possibility to go and travel in Europe and study there. Here I would like to ask you what kinds of facilities these internships offer to the young students from Republic of Moldova.
Well, there are two groups of internships or scholarships that can be done for the young Moldovans. One is indeed scholarships for studies in the European Union through the Erasmus Plus program, and I would encourage young people to use that. Having been an exchange student myself, I think this is really one of the eye-opening.
Where have you been?
I was first I was in Denmark for 1 year during my bachelor's studies, and then I had my master's studies in Italy and in Spain.
Through Erasmus?
Sorry?
Through Erasmus?
Well, at that stage it wasn't Erasmus, but something quite similar. In fact, the first one was close to Erasmus. It was called Tempus at that time, and then the second one was because Latvia had become a candidate country, so we got these free scholarships for studies in the program that I was interested in. But also I would like to highlight one more element that I think is very interesting, is the internships here in the country, what we started this year, because we have a group of high-level advisors to the government. And we announced this year for the first time an internship program of 2 months for young students of Moldova, and that was a paid internship. So for 2 months they were working together with high-level advisors at the government, with the presidency, learning how the government works. And part of that, the reason why we established this program was also to get young people interested in civil service and hopefully also help the government get new human resources for the necessary reforms. And what we have seen as already positive outcome is that several of those students or recent graduates have already joined the civil service. So I think that this internship program already has reached its goal.
It has a good results, by the way. Mr. Ambassador, I know that this week Chișinău hosted the Festival of Ethnic Groups from Republic of Moldova. I have seen you there participating in this festival. A little history, this is a festival that involves the union of all peoples of different categories, ethnicities present on our territory. At the same time, Chișinău authorities receive strange messages from the Russian Federation that politicians from Republic of Moldova do not respect the linguistic minorities who are present on our territory. How do you comment on these two? Because, or maybe how does the EU analyze these messages which Moldovan authorities receive from the Russian authorities? Have you noticed discrimination or any intimidation towards others?
Well, as a starting point, I don't think that given the track record of the Russian Federation when it comes to human rights, it has the moral authority of giving guidance on how to promote human rights elsewhere. If we think of places like Bucha and Irpin, and the genocide being...
Izium also?
Sorry?
Izium also?
So those places which have seen these horrific scenes of violence and destruction and abduction of children. So I think that we have to look from a genuine perspective, really how the human rights are respected in the Republic of Moldova. And there the situation is that you have work to do. And that's not surprising. There is not a single country in the world that has a perfect human rights record. As a EU candidate country, you will undoubtedly have to do even more because the EU has these high standards of human rights. So it is clear that you will have to do more to make sure that this richness and diversity that the country has is really well protected and promoted. At the same time, yes, I was really glad to participate at this festival of ethnicities because you see the richness of the society and how these all people are working together. And I think the best answer to your question whether there is signs of discrimination was the upset messages by the representatives of ethnic minorities saying that thank you very much, but please leave us alone. So I think this is something that we have to separate the realities from rhetoric.
And the last question for today, Mr. Mazeiks, how do you see the European future here in Republic of Moldova?
First, I do see a European future for Republic of Moldova because you are part of the European family. You have demonstrated it clearly. It's not just words, it is also deeds. For me, Republic of Moldova being European means being eventually in the European Union. For that, you are still at the first steps. I think it is very important that these steps are done at a great determination. The government has put in place an action plan to work on those 9 areas that have been highlighted by the European Commission. But it's also clear that it will take time because, and that's why I encourage patience, because there's so much to be done in some of the areas, like we touched justice reform and fight against corruption, that it is clear that it will take time and determination both by the government, but perhaps also, it is quite clear, also by successive governments. So it's more important that the people maintain this focus of European direction as the one that they want to keep and that they very consistently work for this goal.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for today's interview, and we wish you success in all the European Union projects implemented here in Republic of Moldova.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Stimați utilizatori ai portalului de știri NordNews.md, vă mulțumim că ați fost alături de noi și de această dată. Ne revedem și săptămâna viitoare cu un nou interviu marca NordNews.